Hello and welcome to session 46 of Talking Asperger's with Andrew. My name is Andrew Marsh and I was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome 7 years ago, having had a previous career as a geologist in the construction industry. And that diagnosis kind of changed my life. It changed my outlook on the world. I understood why I was different, and that's the big word for me, was being different. And so, what I'm now doing in my webinar sessions is providing information and useful information to employers who might be having someone on their staff who has Asperger's syndrome and not quite sure how to deal with it. So, it's tips and strategies and coping mechanisms for employers to help them better manage people with Asperger's syndrome. What they should be doing? Are they compliant with the law with regard to the Equality Act of 2010? And that's what I try to do. That's what I do to help employers and also to help people who are on the spectrum with some tips and strategies that might help them dealing with colleagues, managers, bosses, and how they can get the best from themselves to help them be as good as they can be at work. So what I want to talk to you about today is quite an interesting topic. It's called clarity. And it's an important one for me as someone with Asperger's, and I know from speaking to people who have who are also on the spectrum that clarity is really important. And what do I mean by clarity? Well, it's someone who, maybe your boss, supervisor, manager, being very clear in their instructions for you to give you a piece of work to do. Or it might not be a work situation, it might be someone who gives directions so that you can get to a venue that you were going to for whatever purpose. But clarity is really important because people on the spectrum, myself and others with Asperger's and or autism, we take things literally. So I'll give you an extreme example of something which you might think is ridiculous, but I want you to hear me out with this. Let's suppose you're working in a team of half a dozen people, and you're the person who's finished this piece of work, and your boss says, "I'd like you to issue it to everyone." Now, you might think that's the 6 people in your team, and not the 2,000 people in your company. But the person with Asperger's heard the words "send it to everyone." Everyone means everyone in the company. So they would think, hopefully they would ask the question, do you mean everyone in the team or do you mean everyone? Because back in the old days when I used to work in construction, we didn't have emails and computers. So when we had reports, we would either print them ourselves with whatever enclosures and documents and drawings that went with it, or we would send it down the road to a printer. Now, you can just imagine the situation where you do half a dozen, well, you've got 6 people in your team, you want one for file and one spare, so that's 8 copies of a report. The bill for those 8 copies of that report is going to be £100, £200, something like that, depending on the length of the report, whether there's colour photocopies that need to be done. Getting 2,000, it's going to be a different kettle of fish altogether. It's going to be a completely different order of magnitude. You might think, well, that's just silly. The person with Asperger's must have known that the boss meant send it to the team. Yes, I said it was an extreme example, but it's where we take things literally. And sometimes that's very good because we will go and do that thing without question. Sometimes when you have experience of working for your boss or that supervisor, and you've got experience of them, you might think, well, did they really mean everyone in the company or 2,000 people? Or did they mean just the people in the team? And so, having got experience of that person that you're working for, you might say, actually, do you mean all of us in the team or do you mean all of us in the company? And he'll go, heck, no, I didn't mean the company. No, don't get 2,000. I meant the people in the team. The 6 of us get 8 copies because I can send one to my boss up the line. Yes, I won't say a silly example because it can happen, but that's an example of an extreme situation where someone has asked you to do something, told you to do something, and you've done it because you've been literal. They didn't mean 2,000 copies to send to everyone. They meant the team. So why not the boss who's asking that piece of work to be done say, when we're done, I'd like to send a copy of that report to everyone in the team and give me 2 spare, one for my boss, one for the file. So that's 8 copies of the report. Perfect. Thank you. That is a clear instruction. That instruction was given with clarity so that the person with Asperger's or autism hasn't got to second guess, hasn't got to interpret, just has been given a piece of information and go away and do with it, deal with it, do it, complete it, issue it, and so on. That makes it much simpler, makes it easier, it makes it less likely for misinterpretation. Because if I have to interpret what you've said, you don't know what's going on in my brain. You don't know the thousands of things that are clocking around in my brain all the time that that would quite often, honestly, probably baffle you as to what is going on in my mind, even while I'm having this conversation with you through the medium of the computer right now. You have no idea what is going on in my head, how many different things are going around in my head, things about something I've done in writing, things about something I spoke to my wife about earlier today, things about what we're going to have for dinner, a whole plethora of things. So trying to get my attention to give clear instructions is important. It's really important that you have my attention. Andrew, yes, make sure that I have turned to you, that I've looked at you. Sometimes some people on the spectrum have difficulty making eye contact and they will look away, look to the side or something like that. And that can be very disconcerting for the person that you're talking to. But we're not trying to avoid eye contact. We're just not so good at it sometimes. I'm not too bad, but there are other people that I know on the spectrum who are very, left eyes, right eyes, what's going on. So make sure you have the person's attention. Andrew, yes, have I got your attention? Even if you have to say that, yes, I'm with you. What can I do for you? How can I help? Then give clear instructions so that I know what you mean and you know that I know what you mean. And we won't go too far down that you know, I know, he knows, she knows. But there has to be the understanding from the person giving the instructions that you think or you're certain that the person you're giving them to, in this case, me, understands what you've asked them to do. Is the instruction clear? Is it precise? Is it specific? Those three words that I keep coming back to on my webinars. Give your instructions, make sure they're clear, precise, and specific. Nail it down. Be absolutely clear in what you are wanting someone to do and nail it down. Excuse me just a moment. That clarity of instructions will mean that the person with Asperger's can go away confident that they know what you want them to do. Because with very few exceptions, and those are usually people who have got a long-standing issue with you, or you've got a long-standing issue with your boss, and there's been conflict, and they're just out to get the company and mess something up. With put those people to the side who deliberately go about trying to fail because of a relationship breakdown or a situation with their work. Let's put those to the side for a moment and say most people don't set out to fail in what they're doing. They want to do what you've asked them to do. They want to do it well. They want to please you. They want it to be of a good quality, high standard, covering all the bases that need to be covered. They want it to be looked upon well, because that will come back to me, say, Andrew, that was really good. I was really pleased with that report, particularly the conclusions. I thought there was a couple of interesting conclusions you came up with there. That was very good. Keep up. But that's the sort of thing we want from you. So that's good because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel valued. Your boss is then going to be presenting that to someone else, someone further up the management chain, or another team, or the client. They want to have something that is good, that represents the company, because if you're issuing reports to a third party, your client, or a supplier, or another stakeholder in the business that you're in, it's really important that what you deliver is of high quality and represents what you do. That if you're in a professional capacity such as a consulting engineer, which is what I work for most of my career, you're putting your professional indemnity insurance on the line by saying, yes, we are happy that this report meets your requirements, Mr. Client. There's our report. A couple of days later, you phone them up, ask if everything's okay. Everything's okay. You then send your invoice for the final fee. And by doing that, you are putting your PI, your professional indemnity insurance, on the line to say, yes, we will stand by this report. it meets our objectives, we've covered all the technical bases, and we've delivered it to you, the client, and you can then take it forward to the next phase of the project, which in a construction project might be going to get planning permission for the design, for the construction, and taking it through all the various stages to take it to construction. There may be all sorts of other stakeholders involved, landowners, services, a whole raft of things that are specific to your industry, to your business, that report will then become the next stage. It will become the stepping stone or the standard by which the rest of the work is taken on board. And all of that comes from clarity. It's really important that the instructions that someone gives me are clear. If they're not clear, I've learned from experience the hard way to ask questions. But someone who's not as confident or not as experienced, or a younger member of the team, might feel overawed by their boss or the supervisor who's given them those instructions, and might, no, I really can't ask questions. I've just got to get on with it. I've learned from experience that if I'm uncertain or someone has given me something that doesn't compute with me, that I I don't understand, or I've got 3 or 4 immediate answers in my head and I think, which one do you want to go for? That's when I ask questions. That's when I say, okay, can we sit down and have a chat about this for 10 minutes? That's where you need to have clarity, so that the person with autism, the person with Asperger's syndromes, fully understands the nature of what you've been asked to do. Is it clear? Is it specific? Is it precise? Then that person can then go on and do that piece of work confident that they're going to deliver something that the boss is wanting. Because you don't want to get to a situation where you deliver something to your boss, your supervisor, your manager, and they go, "What's this? This is not what I expected." You don't want those surprises at 4 o'clock on a Friday. Yeah, I've been there. I've been in those situations. 4 o'clock on a Friday, the report's got to go in the mail in an hour and a half's time tops. Yeah, not nice. Not a good place to be when um, your boss looks at what you've done and goes, "Don't like this," or "I'm not sure about that point," or "Can I clarify that? What do you mean by that?" And then you've got to justify what you've done. You've got to have a discussion with them. If it needs changing, you need to change it, make changes. Do you need to change the drawings? Do you need to change the enclosures? Are there appendices that need to be changed? All things that you don't really want to be having to be running around doing at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, so that you can finish this thing, get it signed off, and stick it in the post. Not a good idea. So having clarity of instructions, clear instructions to the person who's doing the work, who's on the spectrum, is really important. It's really, really important. Just a moment again. And there's another side to this that drops out of this, and that is consistency. Let's suppose you had a project, you worked on it for a month, you you had your interaction with your boss, say 3 o'clock on Friday, or preferably 3 o'clock on Thursday, and you've done any iterations and minor changes that need to be done, so that come 3 o'clock Friday, it's finished, the letter's done, the letter's signed. You can take it up to you either do it yourself, get it wrapped and bound, and take it up to the mail room, get it franked, and get it sent off. Perfect. That's what you want. Let's suppose the next project you have is of a similar ilk to the one that you just did last week, last month. You need to have consistent instructions, so that unless there's a very good reason, and there might well be a very good, perfectly plausible reason why you have different instructions. Maybe the brief from the client was different. Maybe you know something about the nature of the work that is coming up that it's going to mean you're going to have to approach it in a different way, or you think you're going to reach different conclusions. In which case, say so. When you're giving the instructions to the person who's doing it, who's on the spectrum, say, "We've got one next project's coming up. It's very similar to what we did last month, but there are some key differences, which means how we approach it might be different. The conclusions and recommendations we draw from it might be different. How we present the information might be different. So I want you to pay particular attention to this particular aspect of the project, so that we can attack it in the right way, we can address it in the right way, and come up with the right conclusions and recommendations and report." So similar to what we did last time, but different in this following way because of X, Y, and Z. And that's where you then discuss what you think is different about it by being those three words again: clear, specific, precise, so that the person on the spectrum knows, similar to what we did before, but this is something that's different. This is specific to this particular project. I need to pay attention to what my boss is saying. I need to be ready to ask questions when he's talked to me and briefed me about it, and then take it on and sit with it, ask questions, and then move it forward and start working on it. Being fully aware that there are differences to what you did last month. So that if you are having reasonably consistent information and reports and projects going on with what you're working and what you're doing, that you give consistent advice, consistent instructions to your teams that are doing that work. Because the last thing that the team wants is to be given a completely different set of instructions when the work is the same. That doesn't stack up in the way that our logical minds work, and it wouldn't stack up to a neurotypical person either. So be consistent in the instructions that you give. Be consistent in how you want the information presented. Might be different information that comes out of the report, obviously, but you might want it presented in the same way, same types of appendices, the same types of drawings, the same types of photographs or graphs or analysis presented in the appendices, or however it is that the nature of the project that you're dealing with is. So being consistent is really important. It is no good being what you might call a butterfly manager, where they're drawn to something over there. Oh, let's do it this way. Oh, hang on, no, let's do it that way. Let's change my mind and do it this way. Oh, I've just had a conversation with someone else and we need to change it that way. You can't keep doing all of these changes, because it will interrupt the flow of what's being done by the people doing it. It's going to mean it's going to take you longer, or you need to put more resources on it, which is going to cost you more. And can you recover that from the client? And that's where breakdown in communications happen. That's where teams get anxious. That's where they get anxiety. That's where they get uh, stressed out, because you're changing your mind all of the time. You know, I want to see how you're getting on. Oh, no, that's not right. Change, change, change. You've got to be specific and got to be clear, so that if changes are necessary, and changes will happen, the world doesn't revolve around everything being all neat and tied up in a nice little parcel with a neat bow on the top. Changes happen. It's a fact of life. It's how you address those changes so that the teams know what they're doing, the teams are comfortable with what they're doing, and you're not rubbing your teams up the wrong way. You're not putting them under undue stress and strain to deliver something because you've just changed your mind. No, no, I don't want it like that. Do it like this. Well, you could have said 2 weeks ago you wanted it done that way. You know, in NLP, and I've done some NLP, there's a phrase which is really apt for talking about clarity, and that is: the outcome of communication is what you receive. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. I'm going to repeat it. The outcome of communication is what you receive. So if you give instructions and you're met with blank faces from your teams, you've not been clear enough in what you said. They've gone, what? Don't understand. Where's this coming from? I have no comprehension of what you've just said. Or you may get, you may be making the fourth change in 2 days about the project they're doing. And the guy who's doing it goes, damn it, boss, will you please make up your mind? And they've been vocal, they've been verbal, they've raised their voice. The boss is going to probably react back. I just want you to do it this way. Do it this way. I don't care that I'm changing it. This is your job. You do it this way. You've immediately got a breakdown in communication. You've got two people being angry, two people being, in angst and verbal, and there'd be gestures that I were making there. That's breakdown of communication. That's how teams fail. That's how projects fail. And that's how the lines of communication get rigidly difficult. I know that might sound difficult to concept, but you're not communicating with your teams. You're not getting the best out of your teams because you've made too many changes. You're not being consistent, and the people who are doing it are just left confused. They are absolutely confused. I don't know what you want me to do. I did it the way you said to do it. 2 days later, you've changed it. You've changed it again today. What do you want me to do? I don't know how to communicate to you in any other words other than what is going on. What do you mean? Please clarify. And yes, I am getting angry. I am getting frustrated. I've got a deadline next week, and you've just asked me to change half of what we've done from the last 3 weeks. I can't do it in that time. Something has to give. And that's where your staff will be telling you. If someone is coming at you with that kind of language or worse, and they're angry and their face is red and they're using gestures, you as the manager have to step back. You have to step back and say, woo, okay, stop, stop. Use very small words, calm words, and diffuse the situation. Because if you shout back at them, I just want you to do it this way, you're going to have a rebellion on your hands. Staff are going to leave. Staff are going to go off sick because they can't cope with the stress you're putting them under. Diffuse the situation. Whether you're right or whether they're right, doesn't matter who's right or wrong at this point. Say stop. Okay, let's stop. Let's just stop. We've we've come to an impasse, and I apologize because I have I have given you conflicting information over the last few days. Let's let's think about this. Why don't we go away? Why don't you go back to work, get yourself a cup of tea, or think about what I've just asked you to do? And I want you to make some notes on how you think this will impact how you can deliver it, what technical things are going to be problematical, how much of the report needs to be written, and things like that. Make some notes, half a dozen points or something like that, and I'll go away and I'll think about what we really want to deliver, and let's meet up again in half an hour or an hour's time with a cup of tea, and we can sit down and I can listen to your concerns. You can listen to what I think we should be delivering, and let's talk about it in a calm, professional way. That is a much better resolution than going hammer and tong, shouting across the office, people getting physical and violent with each other. Doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever. Disrupts the rest of the people working in your office or however your work situation is sorted out and arranged, and you will have got someone's backup, and they're going to be digging their heels in saying, not going to do it anymore, I'm not going to do it anymore, you cannot keep doing this to me. Diffuse the bomb. Take the heat out of the situation. Admit you were wrong. That is a huge step that you can do. Even if you don't think you're wrong, admit that you were wrong. Say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said what I've asked you to do in the way that I've done it. Let's cool off for half an hour and then come back and have a chat about it, where we can be more level headed about the situation. And then you can try and be clear, specific, and precise about what you want someone to do. And they will be in a lower mood. They won't be as high energy, they won't be as agitated. And they say, well, maybe I shouldn't have reacted the way that I did. But my concerns are X, Y, and Z. This will delay the project, or this will cost us more time or more resources, and so on. And you have your 3 to 6 points that you discuss with your boss, and you agree a way forward. Now, that way forward might not be the way that you want as the team member, as the worker, but at least you've had a rational, calm, cool, collected discussion with your manager, with your boss, where you can agree a way forward. If need be, document that. Nowadays, the easiest way to do that is to send him an email, say, hi, yeah, just want to record that we had this conversation earlier about the changes you want to make to the project. We've discussed it. I raised these points as being of concern to me for whatever reason. And we have agreed that we will do this. This is how we're going to approach, and this is either there's going to be delay the project a week or two, or you are going to provide some more resources so that we can meet the original deadline. And you are happy to absorb those costs so that we can still meet the project deadline for our client or for whoever the stakeholder was. Do that email, send it off, copy that person's boss into that. Don't blind copy it, just copy it, CC to their boss, so that they know, so that the boss knows what's going on. You might never have a conversation with your boss's boss about that project or about that memo, but you are covering your bases. You are making clear what you've just agreed with your boss, and you make it clear what your concerns were, and you're making the chain of command aware that there was an issue and this is how you're going to move forward. That's how you deal with that. It's not easy, particularly if you've got people who can get very hot-headed about things. But I say, have that half an hour or hour cooling down period, and then come back to it more professionally and calmly, and you will then hopefully get a better resolution as to what you should be doing. So that's really important from a team management point of view. And it's really important that the manager listens and understands that the, the, the changes that you have made for the third time in the last 2 days are causing us problems, causing me problems, causing the team problems. And you need to be big enough, you need to be professional enough to say, yeah, maybe I didn't handle that in the right way, but I just got off the phone from the client and they wanted X, Y, and Z. That's all fine. It's how you manage that change point with clarity, being clear, specific, and precise to your team members. That's how leaders differ from managers. A leader will say, okay, guys, can we sit down, or folks, can we sit down around the table and have a chat about this? We just had a major change from the client. I'd like to brief you about it now, and then I'd like to go away and think about what it is, and maybe come back to me by the end of the day and give me an idea of how that's going to impact us in terms of uh, um, is it going to take us longer? Do we need more resources? Do we need to tell the client it's going to cost additional money because we need to put more resources on the job, and or it's going to take longer for us to deliver? I'd like your assessment of that. If you could do that by the end of the day, and we can sit down and go through it, say 4 o'clock, 4:30, and then we can talk about how we're going to tackle this and deal with it. Until you then give objective instructions to your teams when you've had that briefing, and you then progress the project forward. It may be that if it's a significant change that's come from the client, you might want to get, if you're the manager, you might want to get your boss involved, make them aware of the changes and the impact it has on time and cost for you to deliver. And they might have an input into that as well. They probably will. But keep people in the loop, keep people understanding that can't keep making all these changes without consequences. It's really important. So it comes back to what I said about NLP. The outcome of communication is what you receive. So if you have an angry member of staff shouting at you, thumping the table, getting agitated, getting angry, standing up out of their chair, you have failed in your communication. Because if you've got an angry member of staff that's coming at you and they're being vocal, somewhere down the line, you have failed your communication with that member of staff, with that team member. When you have those situations, take it calmly, take it quietly, diffuse the situation and say, we've just had a change in from the client. I want to brief you about it, and let's talk about it later on in the day, and we can then discuss the impact it has on what we're doing. So that's where clarity and consistency go hand in hand, because as I said at the beginning of this little section here, no one deliberately sets out to fail. They want to do good work because it reflects on them, it reflects on their record, it reflects on their professionalism and how they do their work. And they want to feel as though they're valued by doing good work. So no one deliberately sets out to fail. So if you have issues like that in your teams or with your projects that you're working on, it could come down to your communication and the clarity of what you've asked them to do, the clarity of instructions and the consistency of instructions. So that's a really, really important topic to consider. And I would like you to think of that in the broader sense of your company and the business that you run. Are we being consistent? Are we being clear, specific, and precise? Or are we finding that we have the reverse is happening? We're always having arguments, and there's always loud vocal discussions, and there's aggressive emails being sent between the team members and the manager. It's happening all the time. It's happening too often. It may be that the staff and your team members are just so frustrated at always having to deal with, I say, butterfly managers or micromanagers who are constantly at them all of the time, changing things, requiring information about what's going on all of the time, all of the time, all of the time. It creates tension, it creates disharmony, and you need to avoid that. So if that gets fed up the chain by the manager who might be the sticking point, maybe say, yeah, I've got this. They're always at me. They're always, they're sending me these emails and it's being aggressive. And some of them have been quite vocal to me. I've had to write some of them up the last 2 or 3 months for their discipline. Woo, take a step back. If you're the manager of that manager, take a step back and think, is it the staff where you've had 2 or 3 people written up the last 2 or 3 months? Is it the arguments? What's going on? Is it that the manager isn't being clear, consistent, and precise and specific? That's where the manager above that, further up the food chain, needs to look at what is going, and hopefully would have had the experience from dealing with things like this before, to sit down with that manager and say, okay, what's really going on here? Let's have a candid discussion. What's really going on? Are they all doing this, causing you problems? Or maybe are you micromanaging them? Are you changing what you've asked them to do all of the time? Because I've seen some of the emails and there's lots of talk about changes and consequences and extra time and additional resources. What's going on? And have that candid discussion with that manager, because it might well be that that manager needs better training in how to handle his teams, um, and how to issue instructions and how to issue changes. And that's really important. So the senior manager would need to then take the junior manager under their wing and have a conversation with them, because if this isn't happening everywhere in the company, it might be that one person, that manager, is actually the symptom. It's actually the cause rather than the symptom. The symptom is staff getting written up for disciplinary action when actually they're so frustrated because their boss keeps changing things all the time. So look into that in your structure. Are you always getting one manager, or writing up one team, or people from one team, or is it always one person in the team that's getting written up, or the emails are coming from and they're frustrated with changes? Look into that. Look into that, because it's telling you that something is wrong with the communication within your teams and your management structure. And that's where the management needs to step in and investigate and talk to the people about what's going on. I've seen a lot of emails from you recently, Andrew, about all these changes and things. Is it really as bad as these emails make it sound out, or is it not? Let's have a cup of tea and have a chat. That's what a good manager would do. I seem to have gone a little bit off track on the topic today, but it all relates to communication, and it all relates to clarity of instructions and consistency of instructions. So if you're an employer and you've got people in your teams who have Asperger's or autism, and the same names keep cropping up at management level, we're having disciplinary with this person, or this person's grating against other team members, think about what is behind those disciplinary issues. What is behind that name always appearing in your monthly management meetings? We're having disciplinary with this person. We've had to talk to this person about such. We give them another verbal warning about an issue with them. Look into that in a bit more detail, because you might find you have someone with Asperger's, someone with autism, who is struggling because they are not being heard. I'm not saying always agreed with. That's a different issue. They're not being heard. I can accept when I was working as a geologist not getting my way, absolutely did. Providing I got the opportunity to discuss what we were doing and give my opinion, and then if the boss said, no, I'd like to do it this way, then you would agree to that. Okay, fine, I disagree with it, or I think there's a better way. but at least to be able to express your opinion and say why you think something is a better way of doing something is really important. So if names keep cropping up in your management meetings, delve into that in a bit more detail. It could be you've got someone on the spectrum who's trying really hard to fit in and do the work that's required, but the problems are the communication and the clarity of instructions and the consistency of instructions they're getting from their manager and how often things are being changed. And if there's one thing that I can tell you as someone with Asperger's, change becomes difficult to us, to people on the spectrum. We don't particularly like it. I certainly didn't like change just thrust on me for the heck of it, because it was someone else's style that it's got to be this way rather than the way that you've written it. That, no, I struggled with that. So if you are an employer and you have people on the spectrum, think about what is happening to the dynamics of the people in your teams. Think about what you can implement, what you might need to implement, how much of a more of a hands-on that you might need to shadow or mentor that manager to help that manager get the best from their teams. Because the role of a manager is not to sit and clock watch and criticize and critique every time someone does something. They were 2 minutes late back from lunch, or they were 2 minutes late this morning and they didn't stay back. That's not the role of a manager. The role of a manager is more like a leader, to inspire your teams to do the best they can be and produce their best work. That's where good communication and good consistency and clarity go hand in hand. So that's all I wanted to cover today, talking about clarity. And if you are an employer and you're thinking, interesting, this might be something I need to know a little bit more about, then if you'd like to know more about my 7 steps program on ways to better manage people with Asperger's syndrome in the workplace, then I'd welcome you getting in touch. You can get in touch with me through my website, which is aspergersmatters.com, or you can email me at andrew@aspergersmatters.com. Or if you just want a free consultation for half an hour to talk about things relating to Asperger's in the workplace, the Equality Act of 2010, and what you need to do, what are reasonable adjustments, and what steps that you can implement. Simple, straightforward, low cost, practical steps that you can implement to get the best from your teams and all of your people on your teams, including those who have Asperger's and autism, because they might just hold the key to fixing the long-standing problem that you have. How good would that be if they could sort that? And if you could listen to them explaining how they think they could help and develop and make something better, and use their innovation, use their incredible creative minds to come up with a better way of doing something. Good managers listen to people like that, because they can be the difference between being someone in the middle rank of the ladder of your business, or being the leaders at the forefront of what is going on in your business and leading and driving the industry that you're in, not just your business, but the industry that you're in forward, because you have innovative people who you listen to, and they can help and develop new products, new processes, better way of doing something, which drives the business forward, makes them feel valued, makes their managers, all the managers in the food chain look good, makes your business look good. That's what you want from your business. I don't need to know what your business is to know that that's what you want from your business. You want your business to be profitable so that you can share those rewards with your shareholders and with your staff. You want your business to be well liked and valued, and what's the word I'm looking for? Be a leader, be a business leader in your field. That's what you want to be. Even if all you're doing is making ball bearings, and I'm not knocking people who make ball bearings, because without things that rotate like car wheels and things like that, we wouldn't, without ball bearings, you wouldn't have wheels that work. So every little piece matters. Every little piece matters in what you do. And there's a phrase in rugby, um, the people who have inspirational coaches and mindset coaches coming in to train to train the teams. They said if you can do, I think it was Clive Woodward, the England manager, uh, if you can do 10 things 1% better than your opposition, you're going to be ahead more often than you're going to be behind. So What little steps can you take today that will make your business stand out and shine? And by doing that, how can you reward your staff and the innovators within it who drive your business forward? If you want to get in touch, please feel free to do so. I'd welcome to have a half an hour free consultation with you to see how I can help your business. Or if you're on the spectrum and you just want someone to chat to about something that's going on at work, how you can fit in better at work, what you can do, happy to have that conversation with you, see how I can help you. So that's me, Andrew Marsh, the resilient Asperger. And that's all for today. But take a look out on LinkedIn on Friday. It, I'm having problems with my LinkedIn. So if it's not on LinkedIn on Friday, I'll try and get it as soon as I can thereafter about what next week's topic will be. But until then, thank you for your time. Take care, and I'll see you next week.